Hey guys, I'm Mark, and today I wanted to share with you some of the varieties that I'm going to be growing this year, 2021. I'm growing 49 different kinds of tomatoes this year, and I did another video which covered all like the cherry, the grape, and the snacking type varieties. And in this video, I'm just going to cover everything else. So each one of these beds has 8 tomato plants planted in it. There's a lot more plants that you can see, but they're not all tomato plants. A lot of them are marigolds and pepper plants that I just kind of filled in the empty spaces with. But there's 8 tomato plants per bed. A lot of these larger slicer types I am growing from last year, some of my favorite varieties from last year. And then a lot of the other varieties, I got 21 new varieties this year from my buddy Dave, who's a real big gardener. He's got like over 2,000 different irises, and every year he grows like 50 or 100 different kinds of tomatoes. So he gave me 21 different kinds this year that he says are really, really good. And I'm gonna run with it and see what I think. So I'm gonna start off, I guess, on the corner here. This is the first one I want to talk about. This is Royal Hillbilly. This is a, it's bred off of the Hillbilly bicolor tomato. That's like a yellow and with like a red blush and marbling into it. But this one is a lot more of a red with a little bit of yellow in it, as far as I understand. That's one I got from Dave, and he says it's really good. I'm growing 2 of those this year. Next one I've got down the line is Mullins Mortgage Lifter. So I've got 2 different kinds of mortgage lifters that I'm doing that again, Dave gave to me. And the Mortgage Lifter is one of those where there's a bunch of different strains, sort of like brandy wine. So I'm anxious to see what the difference is between Mullins Mortgage Lifter and Kissenberry's Mortgage Lifter that I've got a little bit farther down the bed. In the middle here, excuse me, in the middle here, I've got 2 tomatoes called Curtis Cheek. And Curtis Cheek, Dave's like, he's like, this is unbelievable. He says you got to grow at least 3 of these. So I'm growing 3 Curtis Cheek plants. They're like an ox heart shaped tomato, and they're a little bit pink, a little bit more kind of like a brandy wine kind of skin. So he says the flavor on those is just unbelievable. A lot of these varieties, well, the varieties that I like to grow, it all really comes down to flavor for me. Some tomatoes are just incredibly like weird, different colors and shapes and sizes and whatnot. And that's all well and good too, as long as they have a good flavor. Because sometimes those kinds of tomatoes can have a really incredible flavor. And sometimes they're just sort of all for show. But I really like to narrow it down to the ones, I mean, if they don't taste good, then they have no business being in my garden. That's just sort of my attitude. But anyways, going forward, Hughes is at the end. Again, this is another selection from Dave, and Dave says that this is like a large, light yellow variety, like a pale yellow slicer tomato. And a lot of the tomatoes that I grow are in the field of yellow. That seems to be my, I guess, one of my favorite types of tomatoes if I had to choose. They're a little bit lower in acid, an acid flavor at least. And that's just me, that's a personal preference. My mom likes the yellowish ones too, and so do a few people at the farm here. So I got a lot of yellow varieties that I'm going to cover today. Anyway, that's Hughes, and that covers the last one that's in this bed. I'm going to do my best to try to remember like the locations of them and how many that I'm growing this year. I haven't memorized their final homes yet. Eventually I will know which one's which. I always seem to do after you spend enough time with them. You kind of, oh yeah, Hughes is over there, and Brandy wine's back that way. Anyway, I'll try my best to memorize. I got little tags out on them that tell me what each one is for now, but as of right now, they can be a little hard to see. So this one here on the end, this is Pineapple Pig. This is another yellow tomato that's got some black streaking that kind of comes down the side. It's like black or dark streaking. This is another selection that Dave gave me. He says it's great. Oh, what's in the middle here? Another Curtis Cheek. That's the 3rd one that he said I gotta have at least 3. So it's the 3rd Curtis Cheek plant I have. Golden Jubilee. This is one of my, I guess one of my top picks for a solid yellow tomato. The shape of this is really sort of elongated, but it's not like a true circle, and it's not like flat, like a pumpkin kind of. It's more elongated, so you get more slices out of it, which is really nice if you're looking for a slicing tomato for like BLTs or tomato sandwiches or things like that. Again, lower in acid. Great tomato, Golden Jubilee. Moving on down, Downster. This is a new one from Dave, or new for me, selection from Dave. This is just a large red slicer. We'll see how that one goes. African Queen. I grew a couple of these. These are from Dave also. Again, big red, pink slicing tomato, and he says it's just got an awesome flavor. So I'm growing 2 of those. I don't think I missed anything in here. There might be something on the side here. Yeah, there is. Tayga. Tayga. This is this is like an ox heart tomato. It's green and it's got some pink on the inside of it. It sort of reminds me of one of my favorites, Nanostoir, which is like my favorite from last year in terms of flavor. It kind of looks like that, but it's a different shape. Like I say, it's an ox heart and it's a little bit smaller. It's called Tayga, like the forest, like the boreal forest south of the Arctic. So it's T-A-I-G-A, and I think that might have something to do with, I read it was bred out of Canada, this selection. So this variety takes a little bit of a cooler climate as well and should perform good there also. So it's Tayga, T-A-I-G-A. That's going to be interesting. After looking at the pictures, I kind of wish I grew more than one of those, but I'm growing one out this year and we'll see how it goes. This bed behind me here only has a few larger tomatoes in it. I think maybe a couple, and then it goes into cherry tomatoes, but the couple that are in here, I will touch on those really quickly. Garden peach is one of those in-between tomatoes. I also talked about that in my cherry tomato or snacking tomato video, but that's one of those in-between varieties. It's kind of small. I wouldn't really call it a slicer, so that's one that's going to be, hey baby, that's one that's going to be a little bit fuzzy. So I'm interested to see how that turns out. I've never grown a fuzzy tomato before. You're fuzzy too. Yeah. Carmelo is the next one in line. That's a French market tomato. I have one of my favorite gardening books. In there they say that Carmelo is the author says that's their personal favorite tomato. I've never grown it, but from the pictures it looks like it's got a really neat texture to it. So we'll see. And then and then Cosmos is another in-between kind of tomato. It's not really a slicer from what it looks like. It's not really a snacking tomato either. It's kind of like a smallish, smaller than a tennis ball kind of tomato. But that one's got a lot of anthocyanins to it. The way the sun hits it, it turns the skin like a certain color. And it's going to be sort of speckled. If you've ever seen Brad's Atomic Grape, that's I grew that last year. Same breeder as this one. So we'll see how that one looks. That's going to be a crazy looking tomato. I can tell you that already. So that covers everything on this side of the garden. Now what we'll do is we'll walk over there, and I got 5 more beds, and those are all going to be the larger tomatoes, and we'll talk about some of those. Come on, baby girl. Yeah, let's play the tackle my foot game. You can't? No. All right, so this is the other side of the garden. The first one I've got on the end of this bed is called Big Zack. Big Zack is one of those, I mean, it's big. It's one of those big, humongous slicing tomatoes. This variety was actually used to win the Guinness Book of World Records largest or heaviest tomato. And it held that record for a while here recently. But I grew it last year. I grew 1 plant of this last year, and the tomatoes, first of all, were huge. But second of all, the flavor was really, really good, and the texture was awesome. A lot of times with these gigantic, huge, humongous tomatoes, they either lack in texture or they lack in flavor. And this one sort of kind of shined in all 3 categories. So I'm growing it again this year. I'm growing 2 plants because I do want to try to see if I can get a really big tomato off of one, and the way I'll do that is I'm going to do a lot of pruning, and I'm going to sacrifice a lot of flowers and knock it back to just a handful of flowers and try to dedicate all the plant's energy into just a few fruit, and we'll see how that works out. So that's Big Zack. Going forward, Virginia Sweets, the town favorite. I'm growing 6 of those this year just because we like them so much. Nice big yellow beefsteak tomato with a pink blush and streaking at the bottom, a little bit of green at the shoulders. It keeps well. For an heirloom tomato, Usually you get a lot of these heirloom tomatoes, you pick them and then you got to eat them within a day or two or else they just rot on your counter. This one seems to hold up pretty well, which is great if you're going to be giving away to people. Brandywine, I'm growing the Brandywine Sudeth strain. Again, this is a variety that's got several different strains attached to it. This is the Sudeth strain, growing 4 of those this year. Brandywine is always a very good staple to have in the garden as far as heirloom tomatoes go. That's one that you just can't go a year without having. Another Virginia Sweets, excuse me, Nanostoir. I got 2 of these on the end here. My favorite last year in terms of flavor, unbelievable flavor, but it's not like the Virginia Sweets in that it'll keep. It won't keep. It's got a really thin skin on it. It's one of those kinds of tomatoes that if you breathe on it the wrong way, you're gonna crack it or bruise it. But if you don't mind being careful with it, unbelievable texture, unbelievable flavor. It's green and it's got like red marbling on the inside. It's just a wild looking tomato when you slice it open, but it's called a Nanostoir, and that's French for black pineapple. So good, such a good tomato. Growing 4 of those. Around the corner, more Virginia Sweets. Chef's Choice Red. I like Chef's Choice Red. I mean, I like the Chef's Choice series a lot. I grew Chef's Choice Black, Orange, and Yellow last year, and they were all phenomenal. Most of the Chef's Choice series has come away with an AAS award, which is a really big deal, and I think the varieties that I grew last year certainly deserved it. But I didn't grow Chef's Choice Red, and I'm going to be growing that this year, and I don't think I'm going to be disappointed with that one either. Let's see. Chef's Choice Red, I might as well move on to another one that's similar to it. That's Celebrity. This is our 3rd best-selling tomato at the nursery. Wonderful plant. If you just like a regular red, round, I call them boring tomatoes, a regular red, round, boring tomato, they all have their place in this world, and I like a good old red, round, boring tomato every once in a while myself. This one will certainly be a good choice for that. Excellent production. Skin crack resistance is very good, and it'll just keep on going for you. Let's see, these are some more Brandywines there. And what do we got on the end? More Virginia Sweets. Surprise, surprise. Yep, I think that finishes it up for this bed. Just want to make sure there's nothing on this side. No biting my feet. Stop. I'm going to put you inside. You want to go inside? Okay. All right, so we're going to start down on the end here. These are green giants. I got 2 green giant plants. They're potato leaf plants, and the name is as implied. They have large green fruit, apparently. This is another one that Dave told me is just an unbelievable tomato. He says that Holly's just going nutso. Well, I don't have anything planted in that bed yet, so that's good. Yeah, must be nice being a puppy. Anyway, green giant, it's a large slicing tomato, and Dave says that this tomato will hold its own with Brandywine or Persimmon or my Virginia Sweets or any of the above, just as far as flavor and texture and all that goes. He says there's not a lot of cat facing to it, like you would have with the Aunt Ruby's German green, which I like a lot. If you haven't grown that one, that's a great one, but apparently this one's supposed to be a little bit more uniform in shape. I'm going to go into a lot more green varieties. I'm going to start getting into those a little bit because I've sort of gotten hooked. I mean, Nanostoir, I don't know if you call that a green variety, but it's a mostly green variety, and that's one of the best tomatoes I've ever had. So I'm going to start definitely migrating in that direction as far as my selections go. So it's green giant, potato leaf. This one here is called Big Brandy. This is a cross. It's one of those heirloom or hybrid crosses that's got Brandywine in it. Brandywine is just such an excellent heirloom tomato. It's the most popular heirloom tomato there is. So there's several crosses that are made off of that as being apparent in the genetics. This is Big Brandy. So this one is, I think it's Big Dwarf crossed with Brandywine is what that hybrid is. And that's a regular leaf plant. Now, if you look down here, I also have one called Brandy Boy. That's another hybrid crossed off of Brandywine. I'm not sure what the other parent variety in that combination is, but it winds up being a potato leaf, just like its mom Brandywine. So I got a potato leaf hybrid and a regular leaf hybrid off of Brandy wine. I'm excited to start looking at the differences between those two this year. What do you have? Man. All right, I'm gonna, yeah, you're not gonna, no. You're not gonna chew on the string. Give me that. Give me that. That's one thing you're not having today. Leave it. Holly. Okay. Where was I? Oh, more Nanostoir. Look at that. Was I on this bed or this bed? Yeah, I was still on this bed. So more Nanostoir. Yep. And I think that's everything in here. Yes. Okay, so on to this one. Big Beef and Better Boy. Another two great hybrid selections. Big Beef is right up there with Celebrity in my mind. Another just red, round, boring tomato, but excellent choice for that. Better Boy, same deal. My grandmother grew Better Boy a lot. That's a very popular tomato here at the nursery. Let's see. Cherokee Carbon. Now this is a cross between Cherokee Purple and Carbon. And I've got both of those parent plants planted this year. Carbon is over that way, and Cherokee Purple, yep, Cherokee Purple's right here. So you get the awesome flavor of Cherokee Purple, and then you also get a little bit more of the hybrid vigor attached to it, so you get a higher production, and you get a stronger plant. Carbon itself, that parent is a really good tomato. I've never grown it before, but people have told me that it doesn't cat face as much, and it doesn't split as much. So with those genetics in there combined with the Cherokee Purple, it does. I have grown Cherokee Carbon. It does produce a much more uniform fruit than you would be used to with a typical black or purple variety. Like Cherokee Purple. Cherokee Purple is an excellent tomato. It is sort of like, you get those goofy shaped looking tomatoes out of it, but if you don't mind that, the flavor is just unbelievable and really hard to beat. Early Girl on the end here, that's another hybrid that is a top seller for us. That's the second top selling tomato at our nursery. Early Girl, the name is as implied. It is an early tomato, but it is one that just keeps on going all the way up until the frost. Smaller tomatoes, they're smaller than a tennis ball. Good flavor, but as far as production, it's really a tough one to beat. Avas Purple Ball, I grew this when I was a kid, and I sort of remember what it's like. It's a smaller tomato, it's a ball, it's round, but it's not really that purple from what I remember. It's more like a dark reddish side of things. Good tomato, I'm excited to refresh my memory on it. So that's that one there in the corner. Jersey Devil, I got two of those planted this year in these beds. I love Jersey Devil. I would plant a whole lot more. In fact, that's the plan. I hope that I can plant the whole back fence of the garden with paste tomatoes this year and processing tomatoes. So that's sort of the game plan for this one, and why I don't have that many planted in here. But I did want to make sure that I had at least a couple in case of emergency, in case I don't get around to planting the back wall. So if that happens, I definitely will at least have some Jersey Devils this year. Excellent paste, well, they call it a paste tomato, the type. I've never made paste or sauce before, so I can't really speak too much on that front, but I do can tomatoes, and I canned a bunch of different varieties last year, and Jersey Devil was the hands down favorite. Texture is unbelievable. When I can tomatoes, I just eat them right out of the jar. I can't really stop myself before I get to the end of the jar. Usually seems like I wind up eating the whole thing. And Jersey Devil, man, just unbelievable. Amish paste is really good too. I wish I planted at least one or two of those in case I don't get to the whole back fence thing. But if you're gonna pick two tomatoes for canning, and if I could only pick two, it would be Amish paste and Jersey Devil. They're definitely at the top of the heap, at least from what I've tried so far. Let's see. Holly, come here. Come here. Holly, come here. Come on. Good girl. Come on. All right, so there's Better Boy And we got everything covered on that bed. Good girl. She's going potty outside like a big girl. We have persimmons here on the end. Persimmon, that's a great name for this tomato because that's exactly what it looks like. Just a large persimmon fruit, just straight orange, no mottling, no marbling, nothing like that. Really nice orange tomato, probably at the top of my list for all the orange varieties that I grew last year. I've got two different plants here. I got the seed stock from our seed, my seed, and then I've got Dave's seed. He grew persimmon also, so I'm going to see if depending on where the two different sources of seed came from, if there's much of a difference between these two plants. And then for next year, I'll know which seed I'm going to stick with. I figured why not? He's got persimmon, I've got persimmon. I might as well grow one from each of our batches. Okay, now here's carbon. I did just mention that, but I'll just go over it really quickly again. It's an older heirloom black variety that's known for being really crack resistant and not being all kinds of goofy in terms of its shape. So I'm looking forward to doing a review on that when it starts ripening up. Oaken Jewel. Okay, this one, I think I'm pronouncing this right. It's called Oaken Jewel. This is another one that Dave gave me and says is unbelievable. I'm really looking forward to it because it's very similar to Virginia Sweets in the way that it looks. It's one of those big yellow bicolored tomatoes. It's got pink at the bottom and a little bit of green at the shoulders. But this one, from the photographs that I've looked at, it almost looks like it's got a little bit more of like an orangey-nish washed into it. So I'm really looking forward to see how that turns out. I grew 2 plants of that. After looking at the pictures, I'm kind of wishing I did 3, but that's Oaken Jewel. That's O-A-X-A-C-A-N Jewel, J-E-W-E-L is how that's spelled. And I think, like I said, I think I'm pronouncing it right, but that's how I'm going to call it. Italian Giant Beefsteak. This is one that I grew last year, but I think I got the seed mixed up because the fruits on it were pretty small. I mean, this tomato is supposed to be gigantic, enormous fruits. I discovered this at the Rutgers tomato trial, which is up at the Snyder Farm, their Snyder Research Farm over in New Jersey. And every year they do a tomato trial, a tasting, where they lay out a whole bunch of different tables with a whole bunch of different tomatoes, and underneath those tables they keep these bins that they keep the tomatoes in. And when you look down in these bins, and when I looked down in the bin that had the Italian Giant Beefsteaks, these things were massive. So they I mean, the flavor was great on them too. So they wound up in our roster for tomatoes to sell at the greenhouse, and I've got one right here. And hopefully the seed just got mixed up on my plant last year and not anybody else's, but sometimes these things happen. 1923 Abe Lincoln. That's this one on the end. This is another one that Dave gave me. He says it's awesome. It's a little bit bigger than the regular Abe Lincoln, but I'm assuming that in terms of maturity, it probably matures around the same time. That's a good mid-late variety. A lot of these tomatoes, they all have their time to shine in terms of flavor. Like my favorite Virginia Sweets, for example. You can't beat that flavor for a mid-season tomato, or at least it would be hard to, in my opinion. But as it gets late into the season and the nights start getting cooler, the flavor sort of drops off. A fruit doesn't taste the same in September like it did in August. And a lot of tomatoes are like that. So when you're picking out your tomato varieties, look for when their time is to shine. Abe Lincoln was one of those that when you got into those late summer nights, when the nights started getting really cool, the flavor of this one was just unbelievable. At least the regular Abe Lincoln. This is the 1923 Abe Lincoln, so we'll see what the difference is. I know the size is supposed to be bigger, but we'll see when it comes to ripening time and when we do our review, if any of that changes. So anyway, those are my larger slicer varieties, and everything everything in between, from a large slicer down to just above a snacking tomato. I've got 49 different kinds. I got 80 plants planted so far, and I hope you guys stick with me through the season, because I'm going to make some other videos just on general care, some pruning, how I lay my cages out. I don't think I mentioned those. Those are two of my cages here on the end of this bed. I'm going to start laying them out right after I mulch, and I'll do some videos based on things that I do throughout the season as I progress forward, tying, trimming, harvest tips, things like that. So for now, thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next time.